The wind kicked up dust devils along the main road as Emmett Barlow reined in his horse beside the widow's gate. The sun hung low, a dull ember behind blood-orange clouds, casting long shadows from the fence posts. Something about the silence felt unnatural. No cattle, no bird song, not even the buzz of flies. Then he saw it. A burlap sack sat upright on the widow's porch, its drawstring tied tight, and the fabric darkened with damp patches. Emmett slid off his horse, boots crunching on dry gravel. His fingers hovered near the revolver on his hip. The screen door creaked open behind the sack. There she was, Josie Carter, long widowed, silver hair tied back, black shawl draped like mourning made permanent. Her eyes were hollow but steady. "Please," she whispered, "remove them." Her voice barely carried across the porch. Emmett hesitated, tipping his hat with 2 fingers. "Ma'am, you all right?" "Remove them," she said again, lower this time, as if the sack itself could hear. Emmett stepped closer. The porch groaned beneath his boots. He crouched before the sack and untied the cord. The fabric slackened. Then he peeled it back. His breath caught. He fell back on one hand, eyes wide. Inside were 6 old revolvers, all rusted, all used, laid in a bed of rotted cavalry cloth. Tucked among them, nearly hidden beneath a flap of leather, lay a Confederate officer's badge, dulled and spotted with dried blood. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. The widow didn't answer. She didn't move. He stood, his voice unsteady. "These belonged to—" Josie finally spoke. "To men who deserved worse than death." The wind picked up again, rattling the loose shingles overhead. Emmett stared down at the sack, at the relics inside. They weren't just old weapons. They reeked of something buried, not just in earth, but in silence, in shame. "Where'd you get these?" he asked, quieter now. She met his eyes. "They came to me, one by one." He stepped back down the porch, his boots thudding hard on the steps. "You're saying these are real? These belong to the Scour Riders?" Her silence was answer enough. Emmett looked out across the fading town. Drywell Ridge had been quiet for years. Too quiet, like a place holding its breath. Behind him, Josie turned and stepped back into the darkness of her house. She paused at the threshold. It's time they were seen again. The door creaked shut. Emmett stood alone in the settling dusk, hat in hand, eyes fixed on the open sack. The sky darkened. The wind turned cold. And somewhere far off, a horse cried out. The sheriff's hand trembled as he reached for the badge. "Where'd you get this?" Emmett said nothing. He pushed the open sack farther across the desk, the iron smell of old blood rising with the gesture. The lamps flickered, shadows dancing on the jailhouse walls. "These ain't props, Emmett. This here's real history," the sheriff muttered. "History that should have stayed buried." Emmett folded his arms. "Widow Carter gave them to me. Said it's time they were seen again." The sheriff leaned back like the words had weight. "God help us." Outside, thunder rolled across the plains. "You remember the Scour Riders?" the sheriff asked, not waiting for an answer. 6 men, called themselves Cleaners of the West. Said they were doing God's work after the war, tracking deserters, bushwhackers, freedmen that didn't kneel fast enough. But they weren't clean sin. They were butchers. Rode together till they just vanished. Emmett shifted. Vanished near Josie's homestead? The sheriff nodded slowly. Story was, they tried to take her husband in for desertion. Next day, horses came back riderless. No tracks, no trail, no bodies. He tapped the badge once, then pulled his revolver from the drawer. "That was 20 years ago," Emmett said. "Why now?" The front door slammed open. A boy, no more than 14, stood breathless, covered in road dust. "They're here," he gasped. "Riders. 6 of them, just past the South Ridge." Didn't stop to talk. The sheriff stood so fast his chair toppled backward. "Get to Widow Carter," Emmett said, already moving. "Now." The widow's oil lamp glowed dim behind the window curtain. Emmett pounded on the door, breath thick in his chest. She opened it without a word. "They're coming." "I know," she said. She didn't look surprised. She looked ready. Emmett's eyes drifted past her shoulder. On a long table inside lay a folded gray coat, boots brushed clean, and a holstered Colt he hadn't seen in years. "They ain't just copycats," he said. Sheriff says the sack holds the real thing. Real riders' guns. Real badge. Josie nodded. Then we're not dealing with boys playing outlaw. Outside, horses thundered closer. The riders came in silence. 6 figures, dust-caked and masked, moved through the center of Dry Well Ridge like a curse revisiting its birthplace. One dismounted, walked to the saloon, and nailed a torn scrap of paper to the door. Emmett read it under lantern light. "We've come for the widow." Behind him, Josie stood in the street, hair unbound, shawl thrown back. Her eyes were sharp as rifle sights. Emmett whispered, "Who are they?" She didn't blink. "They're the ones who didn't stay buried." The wardrobe creaked open. Emmett stepped back. Inside, hung with care on wooden pegs, was a cavalry coat, faded blue-gray, sleeves rolled at the cuffs. Beneath it, a worn gun belt, twin Colts holstered like sleeping dogs, and a Spencer carbine polished to a dull shine. Josie lifted the coat with slow hands. "Help me." Emmett didn't move. "You were one of them?" She didn't answer. He helped her into the coat. The buttons clicked shut. The room filled with the scent of gun, oil, and old leather. "I wasn't their kin," she said. "I was their reckoning." Outside, hooves scraped against gravel. A match struck. Lantern light flickered in the street. The riders were lighting the way for death. Emmett stared at the weapons laid out across the widow's kitchen table. "You buried the others. 6 graves, dug with my hands. 1 gun for each man. 1 sack to hold their sins. Then why are they back?" She loaded the Spencer, quick and clean. "Because someone opened what should have stayed shut." Josie tossed Emmett a revolver. "You still shoot straight?" He caught it by reflex. "Not like I used to." "Then stay low. I'll draw the line." They stepped onto the porch. The night air snapped cold, bitter. Emmett's breath fogged. The riders stood 50 paces off, their silhouettes wavering in lantern glow. One called out, voice hollow through the mask, "We're here for what's owed." Josie answered by walking forward, slow and steady, until the porch creaked no more beneath her feet. "You don't owe the dead a damn thing," Emmett hissed. She looked over her shoulder. "I ain't paying a debt. I'm collecting." She set the sack down in the center of the road and lit a single lantern beside it. Flame flared, casting the burlap in orange. Then she stepped back. It was a signal. The riders began to move. Josie unholstered one Colt and raised it with ease, her frame steady as stone. The first shot cracked through the night, muzzle flash bursting like lightning. A rider dropped. Emmett ducked behind a trough, heart hammering, eyes wide. The widow didn't miss. Each shot landed before the echo of the last had faded. "Who the hell are you?" he whispered. Josie didn't speak. She advanced. The 4th rider circled left, tried to flank. Josie spun. The Spencer came up, and the man folded before he reached cover. By the time Emmett stood to fire, only 2 were left. One limped back toward his horse. The other stood frozen, hands shaking, eyes wide beneath his mask. Josie stopped 10 feet from him. "You don't know me," he said. She pulled back the hammer. "You knew the men who wore those guns," she replied, and fired. The last rider crawled backward, boots scraping dirt, one arm limp and bleeding. Josie followed, slow as judgment, Spencer rifle hanging from her shoulder, smoke curling from its muzzle. "No more," he rasped. "I didn't kill no one." She stopped just short of him, eyes hard. The lantern flickered beside the sack, still upright in the road, casting long shadows. "You wore their mark," she said. "You rode in their name." "They were my kin," he cried. "My father. He rode with the 6. You think I chose this?" Josie reached into the sack and pulled out the blood-rusted badge. She dropped it at his feet. "I remember him," she said. "He begged louder than you." Emmett stepped from the shadows, revolver still warm in his hand. He watched the man tremble. "He's just a boy. He's old enough to carry hate," Josie replied. She knelt, eyes never leaving the rider's face. "Old enough to dig up graves and call it justice." The boy's breath came in gasps. "They said you were dead. Said the canyon took you." "It did," she whispered. "But I came back different." Her pistol came up. The boy closed his eyes. Emmett turned his head. The shot rang out anyway. The street fell silent. Smoke drifted. The wind carried it toward the sack, where the badge still glinted red in the lantern light. Josie holstered her gun and walked past the bodies. One by one, she placed the revolvers from the sack beside their fallen owners. A match was struck. Oil spilled. Flames caught. "Leave it all behind," she said, watching the fire rise. "Let it die proper this time." Emmett stepped up beside her. "That really the last of them?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked to the ridge, where the first light of dawn cracked over the desert. Some say the widow never spoke again after that night. Others say she took to riding alone, a specter in blue and black, leaving 6 empty graves wherever she passed. But the old folks in Drywell Ridge, they'll tell you straight. If a burlap sack ever shows up on your porch, with guns too heavy and a badge too red, you don't open it. You don't ask questions. You send for the widow. Because justice, once packed away, always finds its way back out.